if you get under 7 hours of sleep, your chances of dying from almost literally every single disease goes up by 24%, and reduces cognitive function, depletes your ability to burn fat. I mean, it completely discombobulates your biochemistry. Hey guys, welcome back to another Beyond Biohacking Brother episode. Today I'm joined by my brother Carlos, and today our adopted brother, Dr. Eberwine, is not here. He's on travel and vacation. So I guess today we get to talk about all the things that he doesn't like for us to talk about. Right? To basically recap what we spoke about on the last episode, were about these specific molecules that we need to thrive in today's toxic environment, and that are strategically implemented in our daily routine because they're missing within our soils. So I think that it's very important to talk about ancestral living and where we came from. I think it's important to know where we came from to know where we're going.
For sure.
So
yeah, I mean, when you say ancestral living, let's just kind of define that, because a lot of people, they have different misconceptions about that. So what we mean with ancestral living, and what Miguel was saying, like getting back to who we used to be and what our society used to do, some of the things that made them thrive from, you could call it an evolutionary perspective if you want to, but when I hear ancestor living is, what are some of the things that we used to do back then that they're nowhere near our like strategy of living today, right? Like, I feel like we have been so far removed from a biological standpoint from what we used to do and what we see today now in our culture. Right. So, I know you have an awesome definition of ancestral living, so why don't you give it to them?
Okay. Well, there are 7 laws to ancestral living. Ironically, it took 7 days to create the earth, so maybe that's why it works.
6 days, supposedly.
Well, 6 days, and there was a rest day. Okay. So, number 1, we spent most of our time eating food that was truly organic, nutritionally dense, free of toxins. And on occasions, we experienced prolonged periods of hunger, which we implement today as intermittent fasting.
So compare that to today, right? Where we used to be called hunter-gatherers. We used to have to effing chase rabbits for food. That wastes a lot of calories, right? And you used to skip days. There was big gaps between each meals. This whole concept of breakfast, lunch, and dinner, I think, is a preposterous idea to our ancestors, who had to walk miles for food, chase things down, pick up heavy things, build, right? Like now, look at the contrast. We have Uber Eats. We can virtually order anything that we want at whatever time we want, whenever we need it, by the push of a single button.
And so, for example, when you're fasting, one of the reasons and benefits most people do it is because of the brain-derived neurotrophic factors. That simply means, think about when a tiger is hunting and hasn't eaten in 5 days. It becomes super hyper-focused and strategically trying to hunt their prey, right? So when we don't eat for a prolonged period of time, we get this surge of energy and drive and focus that helps us to tackle on with our daily
actually, let's talk about the obesity factor in this country. What are the rates of obesity and cardiovascular disease and diabetes?
So two out of 3 Americans are overweight or obese. 1 in 2 Americans are either diabetic, insulin resistant, or pre-diabetic. 1 in 3 Americans have cardiovascular disease, and 1 in 6 have metabolic syndrome, which is what we know today as the gateway to every other disease known to mankind.
Yeah. And so when you contrast that today, I think one of the biggest factors, and we won't get too deep into this today, but if you want me to give you the lowest hanging fruit, obesity is not caused by an excess of calories. This whole thing about a calorie is just a calorie is buffoonery, right? The biggest thing that happens with obesity is insulin, right? So when you spike insulin, right, you're basically telling the body, store fat, right? So now in today's world, we have such a high amount of sugar or things that convert into sugar in our food that are consistently spiking our insulin. So in comparison to ancestral living, they ate fat and proteins, right? They ate animal meats. They ate fats, which, protein does spike insulin, but fat spikes your insulin very little. But now when you have people that are eating 3 times a day, 4 times a day, snacking in between and all this stuff, it's like a constant spike of insulin, which tells the body to store fat. And I think that, for all the listeners, we're seeing this in our society. I don't think there was any obese diabetic people back in our ancestor time.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
No, not that we know of.
Not that we know of.
Right. Just think about it. There's no obese animals. Correct. Unless they're confined to human captivity, and they will get overweight. But otherwise, there's no basically disease-free, non-fat animals.
Yeah. So for the listeners, that's a big comparison. So, not only remaining active, but these long periods of fasting is what not only helped us survive, but it also helped us thrive as a species.
Yeah.
Right.
So you're either building when you're eating, or you're either detoxifying when you're not eating. Right. So there's a beautiful balance that people have lost the ability to go back and forth between eating and fasting. Right. And today, our taste buds have been completely hijacked by these super concentrated ingredients like salt, sugar, and oils that are basically causing us to eat. And it's so difficult not to eat, not to eat on a daily basis routinely like everybody does.
And to that effect, when you talk about our taste buds being hijacked, I think, it's really important for people to understand that food processing and the engineering of food is a $1 billion industry, right? So like there's scientists sitting in a room trying to figure out how to ignite the brain with pleasure centers that ignite while you have an orgasm, right? So that food does the same thing. So there's an ingredient called umami that is used in a lot of different products, which is the perfect combination of sugar, fat, and salt, which is found nowhere in Whole Foods, right? And this specific combination creates an orgasm in the mouth, and it actually activates the same reward centers, right? So this is why we have this food addiction in our society today. And I think that's a big factor for obesity in this country, which is completely against what our ancestors used to do.
Yeah. So the next I think we should hit is regular exercising, which is a natural component of our daily survival. We either hunted, we built, we swam, we climbed. You either had to go get it, you had to build it, or make it. Yep. But today, people have to hire somebody just to get them motivated to go to the gym because they don't even want to think of what to do.
Right.
They don't have that self-drive or discipline to move themselves. That's aside from being fat and tired and sick, that they don't have the capability to do it. But I think that's another huge factor.
Well, and when we talk about exercise, I think you will spend a whole other segment on the specifics about exercise. Because look, Miguel and I we do 25, 30, 40-minute workouts at the most. Yeah. If I spend more than 45 minutes in the gym, I'm actually upset. It means that I just was dicking around. I wasn't really focused. So, when we talk about exercise, it doesn't have to be this Herculean effort where you're spending 2 hours at the gym, right? And you're trying to burn 5,000 calories in one session, but it is important to get moving, at least in a very specific, concentrated part of your day.
Right. It's strategic training, right? Like you literally can train twice a week and have much better physical results than somebody who's working out every day, eating McDonald's and Burger King. Well, I don't want to say names, but just fast food overall. So one is to stimulate your muscle mass index by working out and lifting weights, lift stuff, so you can keep your bone and muscle density strong. And the other one is strengthening your cardiovascular system through cardiovascular workouts. And they could be easy as Sprint 8, which is a scientific workout where it's a 20-minute workout with 8 intervals, 30 seconds all out, 90-second recovery. And you get the same fat simulation as if you ran for an hour and a half. Yeah. Right? So it's about how to strategically work out today, guys and women. So you don't have to spend 2 hours in the gym. You just literally need to spend 30 to 45 minutes tops and strategically work out your body versus cardiovascular training and watch what you eat.
And just to give you like a tip for those of you who maybe haven't figure this exercise portion of your life out, and maybe the eating, and you're just starting out. I mean, one of the biggest tips that we like to give people is just give me a 10-minute walk after each meal. So let's say you have lunch and dinner, like within 30 minutes of you eating that meal, you have no idea the metabolic benefit that you will give yourself if you just take a brisk walk for 10 minutes. I don't need you to run. I don't need you to jog. I don't need you to be out there for 30 minutes. Just a simple walk, 10 minutes does what? Like, what's the improvement that it's compared to metformin?
Yeah, it's 30% more powerful than metformin.
30% more powerful than metformin, which is diabetic drug to reduce hemoglobin A1C.
Well, to be exact, they did a study where they took metformin. They had a 31% response to reducing their insulin response, while just lifestyle modification was 58%.
Look at that.
So almost double as effective.
So just with a 10-minute walk. So this is, these are some of the things that we get into when we like coach people. It's not about taking medications. So many people talk to me about metformin. I'm like, dude, just take a 10-minute walk after dinner.
So the science behind it is very simple. You eat food, insulin typically shoots up and stores fat, meaning energy, inside your fat cells. So when you take a 10-minute just regular walk, or with your dog, or go with your wife or your spouse or whatever, it basically stabilizes your glucose, so you don't have to use insulin as much, making you more insulin sensitive.
Yeah.
So if you do have prediabetes or some form of insulin resistance, taking a 10-minute walk, instead of utilizing your liver to release insulin, you can utilize your body's mobilization aspect and process in order to burn that sugar.
Yeah, for sure. So to recap, one is long periods of fasting or gaps of fasting
with healthy nutritional foods
that are low in insulin spikes.
Eat organic.
Right. So listen, I know this sounds really stupid, but just low carb. I like to tell people all the time, man, listen, 95% of your hunger and 95% of the unpleasant fat around your body comes from one thing and one thing only: carbs, sugar, spiking insulin, right? And we'll get a little bit more into nutrition. But if I was going to give anybody advice, like, trade healthy fats for carbs, and you will see astonishing results in your physique just from that aspect. And then the other recap is just move. I mean, if at the minimum you can 5 days a week take a 10-minute walk after your dinner, I think you'd be doing a lot for yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what's the third one?
Third one is drinking pure, clean water that is rich in minerals and trace elements, which are minerals are just the electrical components in water that electrify the system, so you can deliver all the other nutrients that your body needs, hydrates your body. I mean, it has a gazillion different benefits.
Yeah. But I think, this was one of my favorite topics. Like, I mean, we all know the importance of drinking water. The problem is that our water supply is tainted in a ton of chemicals and estrogenics that do not get filtered out of your water with just a standard water filter. So I tell people all the time, if the best investment that you can make, even if you don't engage with us, like, you don't have to take a supplement, you don't have to take a hormone, you don't have to take anything, but just simply getting a reverse osmosis filter in your home, which you can get for as little as $350. It's nothing expensive. I mean, you would be saving yourself and your children from drinking literally things like birth control in your water. Right?
Antidepressants, painkillers.
I mean, the stuff that gets filtered, that gets unfiltered through our water, because our water, by the way, you are drinking toilet water. Let me just tell everybody that, like, our water is recycled water, right? Now you could say, oh, I only drink out of water bottles. Well, now you're dealing with the leaching of plastic in that water, right? So, like, just making sure that your water is not only stripped of these heavy metals and, chlorine and all of these things, including estrogenics and, birth control pills and antidepressants and all this stuff that doesn't get filtered out in our water, but also then purifying the water, right? You're saying add electrolytes?
So the category of things that are found in our water are from endocrine disrupting chemicals, plastics, pesticides, GMOs, heavy metals, missing probably like three of them. But basically these, aside from all the pharmaceuticals, basically they're causing neurodegenerative conditions, and they lead to increase in health risk for like cardiovascular disease, cancer, autoimmune disorders, etc. So to give you a little example, 52 out of 55 studies found that high exposure to fluoride lowered the IQ levels in the population tested. And in 2024, every single testicle in a man tested had plastics in it.
It's insane.
And this is in our water. So having a reverse osmosis filtration system is what you need. But then when you filter your water, you're demineralizing the water. Although it doesn't have all these contaminants, now you have to mineralize your water.
Yeah. And so, to kind of like close that loop, there was a super interesting book I read so long ago. It's by Deepak Chopra, Timeless Mind, Ageless Body, I think it was called. And, the cool thing about that book is that they studied what they call now the blue zones, right? So they studied all of the great countries where they had the most amount of centenarians, like people that lived over 100 years and that were active. One of the things that they found, as a common denominator, is that they lived near Arctic water supply, meaning when you have a big piece of ice that starts to rub against the rocks, it rubs off some of those minerals which we call trace minerals, that were being leached into the water that we're drinking. So to your point, it's you can't just filter your water; you also have to mineralize it again to get these electrical components that our bodies need. And, that's why vitamins and minerals are so important. We touched upon that last segment.
Right. The key component is that you guys need to understand that our water in this country is filtered. It's recycled. So we're not getting water from a river or from a pristine place. It's all filtered. So, and on top of it, we're 60% or more water. So I think it's very important that the water you're putting into your body and the elements that electrify that water, which are, again, essential minerals and trace elements. Essential minerals are the macro, trace elements are the micro, the small ones.
Yeah, and we talked about, the, what was it called? What's his name? That we interviewed. Yeah, Robert. So if you guys want to know a little bit more about the importance of water and minerals and electrolytes, you can go to our YouTube channel and see our interview with Robert Slovak, which is one of the greatest scientists when it comes to water. What did he called the what did he call it? He called it the fertilized soil that springs from that springs everything. So electrolytes are actually at the base of our bodily functions, right?
The inner milieu.
Inner milieu. That's it. Yeah.
Which is all the complexity and components that make the intricate parts of our internal biochemistry. Are all electrolyte based, and all animal life came from single cell and water based. So consuming the proper electrolytes, and that's the other thing. Again, 90%, if not more, of electrolytes in the market are garbage. They just have sodium, potassium, chloride, magnesium. But the thing is that you need 78 of these ionic minerals in their perfect proportion. So we use a product called Quinton, which has been around since 1897, and it's been considered medicine in the other side of the world.
Yeah, it was considered medicine in the what was the name? The physician's reference for Europe and France.
Right.
René Quinton actually made it into. I think he awed and shocked people when he was able to bleed out 3 dogs, and he infused them with this concoction of electrolytes, which is it's a resemblance of our plasma.
It was 6 dogs that they transfused them. They were sick, 3 of them. They transfused their blood and replaced it with the Quinton isotonic. So if you guys look it up, guys, there's hypertonic and isotonic. Isotonic, it means that it matches the osmotic concentration of our blood. Therefore, we don't recommend you to do it, but you can do it intravenously. So they replace the blood, and then these animals basically were
walking around and lived and healthy and happy. So they recovered from their disease. It was actually incredible.
And then even the fertility for pregnancy.
Oh yeah. So just so you understand, like the power of electrolytes, right? So, when at the time of René Quinton, when he was performing these scientific studies, one of these studies, in order to participate in the study, you had to have had 6 consecutive four consecutive
miscarriages.
Birth failure. So either miscarriages or ectopic pregnancies or stillbirth. So you have to have 4 consecutive ones in order to qualify for this. So he took hundreds of women, he put them under this protocol of electrolytes that he created, and every single one of those women had successful births after the treatment. That's how powerful minerals and electrolytes are. And then
they were actually followed for 3 years, and they measured things like, their reproductive system, their arms, their measurements between their head and their toes, and all measurements came back perfect.
Yeah. So if you walk away today with just one advice and one investment that you can make to better your health, and one of the things that is affecting you the most is properly filtering out your water system and remineralizing your water. So we remineralize it with Quinton, which is very easy. And we have a reverse osmosis filter on our counter that's, $400, and that's all the water that we drink. Right.
So the next item on the list was the 4th universal ancestral law, which is sleeping 7 to 9 hours in a day in accordance to our circadian rhythms by going to bed with the moon and awakening with the sun.
Oh my God.
Every day.
I know that there's people rolling their eyes right now talking about getting 8 to 9 hours of sleep.
Yeah. So all studies show just it's this simple. If you get under 7 hours of sleep, your chances of dying from almost literally every single disease goes up by 24%, and reduces cognitive function, depletes your ability to burn fat. I mean, it completely discombobulates your biochemistry.
Yeah.
So
I think we'll do a whole segment on sleep. I mean, that's how important this is. I'll give you a little anecdote, a little preview. We were at the Rat Fest, which is one of our favorite longevity conferences, and Brian Johnson was there. Remember? Yeah. Brian Johnson was there. And look, philosophically, there's a lot of things that I don't align with Brian Johnson. But the cool thing about him, and the thing that I appreciate, is that we can stand on his shoulders because he's released all of his research. He's the most studied man alive. He has how many doctors?
Like over 30 something.
Yeah, he has 30 some doctors on staff, and he's constantly being monitored. And I remember when they asked him, he's like, okay, so out of all the money that you've spent, what is the number one thing that you think has benefited you the most? And I mean, he didn't even blink, right? It was sleep, no question. So mastering this portion of your life is crucial.
So sleep is your number one remedy, your number one medication, your number one to-go solution.
Yeah.
And it's what actually improved every aspect about his health. And he actually did a little observation study on him that when he was sleep deprived, his willpower decreased, and he made worse choices, which then that wrecked his sleep even more, and was a vicious cycle. So sleep is crucial, guys. And for the note of it, people try to work on their sleep when it's night. Your sleep starts from the moment you wake up. First thing we do in our daily lives, wake up, brush our teeth, do our little cosmetic procedure process in the morning, and
self-care.
Self-care process, and then go and step outside, ground, barefooted into nature and look into the sun, or just sit in the sun 15 to 20 minutes. And you want to get that first hour of light in the morning. A lot of you won't be able to do that, but the first hour is the one that's not unhealthy for your skin, because there's really no UVA or UVB rays of spectrum of light. So you're just getting all the benefits from the sun exposure, which is red light.
And it's, what? It's funny how simple this really is. I mean, if you're listening to us, you probably know who Gary Brecka is and his superhuman protocol. I mean, he even claims that you could get all this stuff for free. Some of this stuff costs $150,000 to do. But I got to say, when I started to implement this in my life, as silly and as simple as it sounds, do you feel like it has a cumulative effect? I feel like it has a cumulative effect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even when we travel, for example. So our morning routine, we share this. We wake up, go outside, look into the sun, put your bare feet on the grass, dirt. I don't care if it's just a little patch of grass or a portion of dirt or on a stone. I don't care. Just put your bare feet on the ground and just take deep breaths in, what they called hypoxia, right? Oxygenating your cells. And as silly as it sounds, this 5 to 10 minute little routine, man, I mean, I can definitely, I don't know about you, I think you do, but when we travel and I don't get to do this, I feel the effects.
Yeah.
For sure.
What sets your circadian rhythm is sunlight and your metabolism. So Breathwork in the morning just resets the entire system by oxygenated, getting rid of carbon dioxide, and just kind of like recalibrates you for the day.
And so in comparison to Ancestral Living, think about this, guys. So, I can tell you one thing, and we'll talk a little bit about maybe, blue light and how that affects us. But when the sun set, first of all, we were outside working, exposed to the sun, which increases, hormone called serotonin, which is what wakes you up, right? And gives you energy. We were outside, we had a lot of sun exposure. And then when we retrieved to our caves, right? Like when sun set, I guarantee you, we weren't eating, we weren't chasing things around, we weren't moving around very much. We were going to bed, right? And so we got all of the rest that we needed, and all of that work that we did in the daytime consolidated during sleep, right? And the problem is now, because of these blue lights, it's like, we're up. Cities are up 24/7, 365, and people don't realize how much screens, and again, we'll get more deeply into this in a different segment, which we'll just dedicate to sleep, but just know that these exposures to lights, blue and green lights, inhibit your ability to produce melatonin, which is what takes you and keeps you asleep.
Yeah.
Right.
To make it a little more relatable for people, back in our agricultural era, that's kind of where eating 3 meals a day came from, because they would wake up, eat, go harvest the land for 4 or 5 hours, have lunch, take a break, and then go back to the field for 4 or 5 hours until it was 5, 6 o'clock. Yeah. After that, you turned on some candles, which that only has orange, red, and yellow spectrum of light, which doesn't interfere with this melatonin that you need at night. So by the time it was 7, 8 o'clock at night, you were out. Yeah. And this is why we went to bed with the sun and awoke with the sun. Sorry, we went to bed with the moon and awoke with the sun naturally without having an alarm clock. Once you get your circadian rhythm dialed in, you'll notice that your alarm clock is actually not necessary. Yeah. Like I'll wake up literally on the dot almost every single day, 5 minutes before my alarm clock goes off. Yeah. I become aware. You have a natural alarm clock, and it's regulated by these genes called clock genes. You have like 10 of these. And when you're exposed to light, it resets them. So in the next, 12 to 16 hours, it knows you need to go back to bed.
Yeah. So, like I tell people all the time, again, let me just give you a tip right now. We talked about water filter, but we also talked about, I'm going to talk now about sleep tracking, right? Like we have a saying, if you can't track it, you can't hack it. And the problem is that we are so sleep deprived. There are so many things that are affecting our sleep that if we don't build a sleep, like we like to call it sleep fitness, if we don't develop a sleep routine and, a sleep routine that we can actually track to see how things improve or what things affect your sleep, then you'll never be able to really master this area, which again, after the millions and millions of dollars that this one man, Brian Johnson, has spent, he says it is the number one factor is sleep.
If for those of you that can relate, if a lot of you trade, it's like not knowing what your stock or trades are at every day. Yeah. How do you make decisions without actually knowing the metrics? Right. So you need metrics to make decisions and understand where are your gains, where are your losses, and to understand if you can expose yourself today to cold plunge or have a hard workout, depending on HRV. We're not going to get into that today, but there's a lot of metrics that are necessary for you to understand and perform intelligently.
Well, no, I think that's important because a lot of people have heard about, red light sauna and cold plunging. And there are people, we get tons of patients that have this stuff and they're like obsessed with it, which is cool. But then they do it every day, no matter what. And it's like, no, man, like if you slept like crap and your recovery sucks, which you would only know if you have a sleep tracker, it's actually detrimental, right? To do cold plunge because you're exposing to too much stress.
Even fasting can be a problem.
Correct.
So maybe that day, instead of fasting 16 hours, you fast 12 hours. So it's, it's more gentle on your body because all these things are stressors, right? That's why they're called hermetic stress. If it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. Yeah. Too much of it is a problem. Too little, no benefits. Yeah. So it's finding that strategic exposure to these stressors that make you stronger. Yeah. And that's actually what we do at our practice. We make lifestyle recommendations on how to apply all of this in your life. So it's not just taking a couple pills, maybe injecting or putting a cream, but lifestyle modalities that play a role into that whole symphony that makes it
and make it not monotonous, right? Like some people put fasting on a schedule. Like you don't fast the same every single day because again, you might have not slept well, you might have never recovered, or or like you can't put cold plunging on a schedule because again, if your recovery sucked, now you're hurting yourself, right? So it's really important to kind of keep it, understand that this is a lifestyle, but you have to know when to do it.
Right.
What's the next one?
The fifth ancestral law of living is environmental toxins. And for example, we didn't have any endocrine disrupting chemicals. We didn't have electromagnetic fields that were artificial, artificial lighting, and all the other toxic junk that's in our environment. So it's creating an environment in your home and office or the places you spend the most amount of time and make that bubble to replicate nature as much as you can. Majorly reducing electromagnetic fields, which is another thing we test for, but getting rid of all the endocrine disrupting chemicals that are messing up and, throwing our system out of whack.
I mean, EDCs, it's such a hard topic to talk about because there aren't a lot of solutions. And it becomes almost overwhelming when you look at the amount of exposure that you have to them every single day of your life. I mean, EDCs are responsible for over 50% decrease in hormone balances across our world today, and it's only getting worse. So, the bad news that I have for you is that there's no way to have 100% insulation from these things. Like you have to live on this planet. Like you're going to be exposed to plastic. Let's face it. Like plastic made our lives better, but not necessarily better for our health. But you're not going to reduce plastic. You're not going to not go outside and be exposed to cars on the road and planes hovering over you and not brushing your teeth or putting shampoo. Like you have to, this is a journey that you have to start really looking at ingredients and really purchasing and voting with your wallet in the sense that supporting companies that are doing the right thing by not putting these harmful chemicals that you're smearing on your skin, inhaling, drinking through our water supply. I mean, this stuff is one of the single most challenging things that we face as a generation today is endocrine disrupting chemicals. And, again, we'll have Dr. Rudy and we'll do a whole segment on those so we can identify which ones, like what are the biggest ones, which are the ones that you find the most or are the most exposed to, because we want to teach you how to mitigate this. We got into it in the section of supplements where it's not just about giving your body what is missing, but also reducing what's poisoning you on a daily basis. Right. And our ancestors, in comparison, the reason why, there's such a big gap now is because our ancestors weren't exposed to these pesticides and all of these things that today, every single day before you even get in your car to go to work, you're being exposed to.
Right.
What's the sixth one?
Walking barefooted in nature, grounding ourselves, helping us restore biochemical balance, which again is what resets the circadian rhythm. So we accumulate all this excess electromagnetic currents from our surroundings, and by walking barefooted in nature, it helps us discharge it into the earth. And studies have shown that they can't see exactly. It's so fast how it happens that as soon as you're exposed to barefooted or any form of grounding, like they try to catch that moment, and it's so quick that it happens at the speed of light. But they did show that in blood, after being 45 minutes in nature, the viscosity of the blood diminish, reducing inflammation, and we get electrons from the earth. Electrons are basically free antioxidants that are fighting off reactive oxygen species in our body. So we're getting quenched in your body with natural boatloads of antioxidants for free. Yeah. And it's what basically calibrates our electrical system. Hence why it's a perfect combo to expose yourself in the morning to sunlight with the grounding, because it reduces inflammation, it reduces the viscosity of your blood, and it resets the entire circadian rhythm along with it.
This is why it's so peaceful to go to the beach.
Right.
I mean, that's one of the places that we spend the most amount of time without shoes is in the sand, right? Not a lot of people walk barefooted through the forest.
So for a lot of you, might be a link that you can make whenever you spend a lot of time in nature on the beach. Usually you're barefooted, and you're getting a lot of sun, and you build up this neurotransmitter hormone called serotonin. And when it builds up in your blood at night, it converts to melatonin. So you get a huge wave of this melatonin being released in your body, and that's why you sleep so well
after a beach day. Definitely. Kids get plummeted after the beach.
Right.
What's the last one?
And the last one is living with an interconnected, tightly bonded community, which that produced a lot of oxytocin naturally in our bodies, which is a hormone and sort of a neurotransmitter that basically reduces your feelings of stress, anxiety, fear. And actual studies have shown that it actually increases the telomerase enzymes at the end of your chromosomes that elongate life. So it is a great hack for longevity, for your health, and for overall stress and anxiety.
And I think, that's so important, right? Like having a tight little group, that you consistently bond with on a face-to-face kind of setup where, the problem that we have today, I mean, again, these are the unintended consequence of progress. We can have you can have an interview or do a meeting halfway across the world, and we can get a lot of stuff done. But that stuff also disconnects us from people. Like I think that the social media obsession, like we become so hooked on this stuff, it's kind of like governing our lives, and we lose a lot of that human connection that makes us fulfilled. Right.
Well, to bring it full circle, I mean, let's just look at the way we live today, right? 95% of our day is spent indoors. 50% of that time is sitting in front of a computer. We're eating hyper-palatable lab-engineered food that is toxic-laced and designed to cause an oral orgasm, known as a foodgasm. We wait for our happy hour Friday cocktail blend. The obsession with social media, like Instagramming, tweeting, Facebooking, TikTok, whatever else is out there.
We wear sneakers everywhere we go.
The binge watching of Netflix, HBO, Hulu, whatever other channels out there. And now we have virtual reality, right? Playing video games and spending more than half of your day inside a virtual space, where our moms used to tell us, hey, don't sit in front of the TV that is going to make you blind. Now we're inside of it. And then our smartphones, which we're glued onto, and they're delivering cheap digital dopamine 24/7 around the clock to you, your family, your kids. And that has completely hijacked their reward center. So it's equivalent to letting your kids or yourself expose yourself to street illicit drugs that are just as powerful, dangerous, and equally addicting. And that's what we're living like today. So that's why it's so hard for some of you to not do these things, because our brains have been completely hijacked and we're addicted to this stuff. So what we help you is gradually wean off of all of these things, so you go back to our ancestral living, which is how we lived healthy and vibrant.
We don't give you advice on how to become a caveman. I mean, you still got to live in this world.
I love technology.
Yeah, we love technology. Definitely. It's made our life better. I mean, our business, is based on technology. So like, we're not telling you to go back to caves or move to a forest, but that's what biohacking is all about, right? Like, how do you utilize these modalities that are accessible to me, that are cheap, most oftentimes free, that I can implement in my life that more closely mimic how our ancestors lived, so we can have better health, better vitality, better connection, and overall happiness and joy in our lives. It's not about always taking a pill, like my brother says. It's not always about, I got to do cold plunging 7 days a week, at 42 degrees for 5 minutes. Like, it's not about that, right? It's about this beautiful dance and balance, and trying to mimic how our ancestors lived in easy, cheap, and sustainable ways that we can do today. So
for now, please like this video if you like what you heard. Follow us, share it, play with it. I don't know, just whatever you can to support us. And ask us questions so we can bring different topics and make it very practical and real for you guys, and get rid of all the fluff and give you stuff that really works. Because at the end of the day, the proof is in the pudding. If we take off our shirt, you'll be surprised what we look at, right? So just look at the other biohackers and what they look like. Maybe having a six-pack and looking great is not your thing, but the byproduct of health is that you will look really good.
And so if you need advice, you need You need to be pointed in the right direction. I mean, we have coaches available. When you call our company, only a qualified coach is going to pick up the phone, and they'll be happy to spend the time with you and point you in the right direction. For free, yes. Right. So now, don't consume all of our time either. Be fair.
Right.
But until then, we're excited about the next segment. We'll have Dr. Rudy on. We'll talk about a ton of different subjects that I think you guys will like. But until then, God bless.